What are the kind of barriers to really aggressively scaling this kind of improvements in resource efficiency that you would kind of all identify?
We both looked at the grey and academic literature, and so what we found is actually the mindset. It's the big problem in scaling this up, because what some of the academics are saying is that circular economy is ending up being another buzzword, as another concept that allows us to do things less unsustainably, but it doesn't actually fully changing. So that's why it's very hard to scale it up, because the understanding of what it is not really out there. This guy, academic Julian Kircher, who analyzed 114 definitions of circularity. And there was an emphasis on waste, just as Ian said, waste reduction waste, and contributing to economy. There was nothing actually about sustainability, the role of a customer and citizen. There was nothing actually about benefiting the wider world. There was nothing about changing the mindset, the way we do business, nothing about business models. And what we actually have seen from the case studies, that they're doing things quite differently. They're thinking about the communities, but to scale that up is quite bigger, because we are still thinking about scaling up in terms of economic sense. How much money is going to bring us, how much is going to, how many jobs is going to create. So that's actually difficult. But most of the publications will say that the challenge would be around knowledge, but I go back to it thinking, okay, what kind of knowledge and how do we teach people? So that's where actually the academic literature about teaching circular economy is saying that we've done it all wrong. We've done it wrong about sustainable development too, because we haven't started actually teaching people critical thinking skills and system thinking skills. We haven't taught people how to question their own role in the world, in the environment. Therefore, we just continue, and circularity is going to be another thing. That's what the academic literature is saying at the moment. It's quite small in terms of how to teach circular economy. There's much bigger literature about the challenges and concepts. But it all goes back as to why we're doing this. And I think we're talking about evaluating interventions. Is actually, I think, what we need to ask ourselves is what we want to do with the circular economy, and then we can think about what is the next step, and then we'll know the challenges. But I can tell it's the mindset.
If I can come at it from probably a different angle, I think it's probably a little bit less complex than that. The biggest barrier to a circular economy is the linear economy and our addiction to it. We've been addicted to a linear process for, well, actually, the process is about 300,000 years old, but we've been addicted to it for about 300 years, where we dig stuff out of the ground and we assume any value to that stuff when we make something out of it, and then we sell it. And it's at the point of sale where we assume the value, and that becomes our economic business, our economic models across the Western world. It's our addiction to that's continual extraction of raw materials for the sake of one point of value at that point of sale is the reason why we can't develop a circular economy. And how we measure that is in two phases that we spoke about over coffee earlier: GDP and CO2. GDP is the measure of the prosperity, of the rate in which we can dig stuff up and sell it. CO2 is measuring the impact of that process, and it's a tug of war against each other, because it doesn't go anywhere. Because we can do all we can to reduce CO2, but if we're just reducing CO2 of a linear economy, it's not going to get us anywhere. So those are the two. GDP and CO2 are the biggest barriers within the linear economy, are the biggest barriers to a circular economy. And I think if we can break that cycle, well, that's sorry. That doesn't make any sense. If we can break that paradigm, we can start to develop a new circular system that will actually look at value across the board, not just in terms of GDP, but in terms of across everything we do and how we do it. We can simplify it down to that, because we simplify everything else down to those two measures. So we can look at circularity as well. And the one thing, we can do to mitigate all of that is understand how we can add value or quantify value of circularity, because we're not doing that at the moment.
They've got a couple of questions online. I've ignored. Go on then. Very quickly.
Just one point, Dan. You said what are the barriers to aggressive scaling? they're us. They're predominantly the people that lead our organisations, not that they're in circular organisations, but you've had a number of case studies given to you today where one of the, for me, analysing them, one of the clear positives from it was strong leadership. But leadership that knew how to let go and let the people in the organisation come up with what Syed calls disruptive innovation, rebel ideas. So, you know, you don't think of it in a negative, think of it in terms of positive. If we can get our people empowered through pedagogical approaches that really, you know, entice them and bring the best of their knowledge, skills and understanding out, some of the stuff that's been done on your table, then, you know, all we're worried about are not the barriers, we're worried about how high can we fly. I know that's a bit of a silly
We're
metaphor.
part of the solution and part of the problem. Our narrative can certainly...
Well, people get in the way. There's too much poor leadership out there.
Can I bring in some of the other panel members?
Yes, so challenges that I'm facing trying to get my product basically used in the oil industry is they're so stuck in their ways of using these like polypropylene mats and things. So me suggesting this new like sustainable alternative, they kind of just don't know what to do with it yet. They kind of think like, oh, that's nice, but like, so I've just been sending them samples and just pestering them, but they kind of don't have enough like drive to make those changes yet, I'm finding. But obviously the oil industry is a particularly difficult one as well. But